So one, I do want to talk about BBC.
Yeah.
The handling of the interview, I want to get your thoughts on it. I know there's been reactions, but I want to go a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
Because I want to compare how your start with the interview with BBC started versus Philip Schofield versus Musk. I got all the first questions, we'll cover that.
Yeah. We were in Czech Republic at the time and we decided to go to Dubai, and I said, let's stop in Romania so I can repack a suitcase. So
That's it, that's the only reason.
That's the only reason. So jet left Prague, landed in Romania, my jet was still on the runway. Came here overnight to pack a suitcase, spent the night, spoke to Greta with a pizza box, and it's 5 a.m. they got me before I flew back to Dubai. So that was my
The infamous Greta pizza box situation.
Greta pizza box.
How much you think there's anything linked to Greta? Is there anything, because the timing of it?
Yeah, I don't think she specifically said that.
Of course.
But there are certainly people within the Matrix machine that you can't attack without catching flack for. There's certainly protected people. It's absolutely and utterly a club, and you're either in the club or you're outside of the club. She's certainly in the club, right? So if you say certain things about certain people, or you get a beef with X amount of people, or you discredit a certain person, they're going to try very hard to teach you a lesson for doing that. And you can see very clearly who's in the club and who isn't by the Philip Schofield situation. This is a man who has groomed boys and had sex with them, but he's in the club. All of the media headlines after 2 days are, let's have compassion, feel sorry for him, his mother's upset. They've attacked me for 14 months, day after day after day, and they relentlessly attack me. Nobody talks about my mental health. Nobody gives a shit how I feel. I didn't do any of the things he did. He's actually done things. I haven't done anything. But when you're in the club, you're protected by the media. When you're not in the club, you're attacked by the media, and that's how it simply works. I've been investigated as deeply as a person can be investigated by multiple federal agencies for 14 months. I was locked in a jail cell and 2,000 people I know was called. My barber, my old housekeeper from when I lived in England 9 years ago, my gardener I used to have in another country I lived in. Everybody was called. And people were offered bribes effectively. The media are calling girls saying, if you have a bad story to tell about Andrew, we can pay you $30,000 if you have a bad story. That's a bribe. That's a bribe. And they still couldn't find anyone. Still.
When we watched the BBC interview with Musk, right? And he goes up and the guy opens up the question with, why'd you agree to do this interview? He says, well, I don't know, what's the name of the BBC? And he's trying to mock them and all this stuff. And there's a part of it where, you know, he calls them out for the mistakes they made.
Yeah. Why did you agree to do this interview with the BBC?
I don't know, I like spontaneity. And I don't know, there's a lot going on. And it seems like, I actually do have a lot of respect for the BBC. Although sometimes I forget what the BBC stands for, you know, but what does it stand? Just kidding.
You know what it stands for.
Yes, I do.
I think the issue some people have is that a lot of people were brought back. I mean, some people were brought back who were previously banned for spreading things like QAnon conspiracies. You have people like Andrew Tate who were brought back, who were previously banned for things like hate speech. Do you think you prioritize freedom of speech over misinformation and hate speech?
Well, you know, who's to say that something is misinformation? Who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC?
You're literally asking me?
Yes.
Well, no, you are the arbiter on Twitter, because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying, who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? The point at which you say that there is this is misinformation, like who is going to decide that?
But you accept that misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause real-world harms, that it can potentially cause.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is that the BBC itself has, at times, published things that are false. Do you agree that that has occurred? Has at times published things that are false. Do you agree that that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true.
Correct.
In its, whatever it is, 100-year history, I'm quite sure.
Yes. Even if you aspire to be accurate, there are times when you will not be.
Right,
but I think in the grand scheme of things, the BBC does aspire to be accurate.
But you accept there has to be a line in terms of hate speech. I mean, you're not looking at total 100% unrestricted speech. I would only just add that, you know, we have spoken to people who have been sacked that used to be in content moderation, and we've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech. in the company. Is that
What
something
hate
that you want
speech are
to
you
address?
talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
But just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
personally, my for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you
But
see more
personally,
hate speech personally.
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can
Right.
you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
And
said
actually,
you-
a lot of people are quite similar. I only
Well,
look at
hang on
my
a second.
following.
You said you've
my
seen
following.
more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
Well, then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
really.
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
That's a false.
no. What I claimed,
just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my
Give me
feed
one
or
example.
not. I mean, right, and
Literally
you can
can't
look at
name
something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK. They will say that. So
Look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a
Right.
single example, and you can't name one.
right, and as I already said, I don't use that feed. But
Well, then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
That's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how
say,
would you
for a
know this
few
hateful
weeks.
content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time.
Wow.
COVID misinformation. You
Amazing.
You've changed the COVID misinformation
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations? And not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Then you watch the interview with you. The first question they asked you was, you're facing some very serious allegations. Have you raped anybody? That's the open question that they ask you.
Andrew Tate. Hello. You've agreed to do an interview with the BBC today.
Yep.
The material is going to be published on television, on radio, online.
Perfect.
We are doing an interview with you because you're facing some very serious allegations.
Correct.
Rape, human trafficking.
Yep.
And also because there's a great deal of concern about the things you say and the impact that they have on young people, on women.
I don't think the concern's about the things I say. I think the concern is for the level of influence I have and the reach I have. I would argue that a lot of the things that are already out there inside of the legacy media and the matrix as a whole are far more damaging than the things I say.
It's the concern about the influence you have being a harmful influence, but let's start with the allegations.
Not necessarily a harmful influence. The fact that I'm massively influential over the youth, and I understand that. but it's my influence as a whole which people are afraid of, not necessarily the things I say.
Let's start with the allegations. Have you raped anybody?
Absolutely not.
Have you trafficked anybody?
Absolutely not.
Exploited any women for
Absolutely
money?
not.
And the video they put up, the first one, they take it down. The second video they put up, that's 12 minutes like the highlight one, they turn, the comment section is open. There's 80,000 plus comments there. Then you look at Philip Schofield.
Yeah.
And you just brought up Philip Schofield. For people that don't know who Philip Schofield, do you mind explaining to people who he is?
Yeah, he was a TV presenter in England. He was very famous. He ran the morning show. And he was grooming children for a very long time. And all the staff knew about it. And the people who worked on the show with them were being groomed by him. And everybody knew. And it was all a big ha-ha-ha joke. And now he's come out saying, oh, please don't pick on me. I feel sad. And the media is saying, I'll leave the guy alone.
The interesting thing about him is his brother, Timothy Schofield, I don't know if you know about his brother.
Oh, what, the one who's in jail for being a pedophile?
Was convicted of 11 sexual offenses involving a child between October 2016 and 2019, including 2 sexual activity with a child. Here's how the interview started. First question, the guy asked him. He says, you've had quite a week. How are you?
You've had quite the week. How are you?
Opening question versus the question they ask you on the opening, right? And then he turns around and says, the media's interest in the affair was motivated partly because of homophobia, alleging that an affair with a much younger woman would have not generated such a scandal. So he gets protected.
Yep.
And he says, all those people who write those stuff, do they ever think that there's actually a person on the other end, right? A message like that gets the average person to say, everything with you is allegedly, everything he did is proven, his brother is proven, yet let's leave him alone. Poor guy, let's target him. This is where their argument has leaks in it. And somebody like you can tear it up.
Absolutely. Philip is part of the club, and I'm not. And this is the thing. I'm a mentally resilient person, right? 14 months they've attacked me. I'm not going to sit and complain about that because that's not how I operate as a man. 14 months they've complained about me. If you type Romania, human trafficking, you type in any of these things, my name comes up, my face, I'm a bad person. I've lost all my bank accounts. I've lost all my social media accounts. I've been vilified all across the matrix in every single possible way. They print my face every single day with something negative next to it daily. Nobody gives a shit about my mental health, right? Because I'm the enemy.